Let's get started on Lesson 3's problem set. It is all about counting by fives and ones on a number line as a strategy to tell time to the nearest minute on a clock. So with our last lesson, we were just counting by fives, but this time we're going to use our counting by fives to help us plot times to the nearest minute. All right, number 1 says, plot a point on the number line for the times shown on the clocks below. Then draw a line to match the clocks to the points. So you can see that our number line here has been filled out for us, starting at 7 o'clock p.m., ending at 8 o'clock p.m. because it goes by the hour. And my skip counts are there for me, but you can see that it's counting by 10, so my fives aren't there. Let's go ahead and add those in. All right. So I need to read the times on each of the clocks and then plot those points on the number line. If you remember from our first lesson, the first clock that we see here is an analog clock. Now those are going to be a little bit more difficult than our digital clocks because the analog clocks, we have to figure out what time they are, and the digital clock just tells us. So if I look here at the analog clock, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so I can see my times. I know that my hour is 7 o'clock because it's in between the 7 and the 8, my hour hand is, and that's the shorter one. Now, my minutes, I start at 12, and let's count by fives. 0, 5, 10, 15. If I go to the 4, that's 20, I've gone past my minute hand, and I don't want to do that. So I'm at 15, and now I just have to count my lines by ones. 16, 17. So this clock says 7:17. My next clock says 7:03. I'm not just going to say 7:3. I'm going to have to put that O in there. It's 7:03. All right, let's read our next two analog clocks, and then we can work on plotting our points. So my hour hand is still in between the 7 and the 8. It's getting closer to the 8 on this one, but it's not quite to the 8 yet. So my hour is still 7. Let's count our minutes. 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. And it's not quite pointing at the 55, so I'm going to go one further, which makes it 56. So my time is 7:56. This last one you can try on your own if you'd like, or you can just keep going with me. Our hour hand is in between the 7 and the 8, so that means it's 7, 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 41. So 7:41. All right, so now we're going to find all of these times on our number line. All right, so I'm looking for 7:17. So just like how I counted by fives first on my clock, I'm going to count by fives on my number line. 5, 10, 15. So 17 is in between 15 and 20. 15, 16, 17. So I'm going to plot my point at 17, and it gets kind of hard to see, so just try your best. And then I'm going to draw my line. The next one says 7:03. So my number line is all 7 o'clock, so really I just have to worry about the minutes. So 3 is in between 0 and 5. 0, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to plot my point here at the 3 and draw my line. If you want to try these other two on your own, you can, or if not, you can keep going with me right now. So I'm looking for 56, and I don't have to count all across my number line if I don't have to. If I can just think of where 56 might fall, or in between what two numbers or what interval. So 56, I know is going to have to be somewhere in the 50s. So 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56. And then the last one is 741. So I'm looking for 41. So I know that 41 comes right after 40. So I'm going to plot my point. All right, and that's all we have to do for that one. If you'd like to trace the dotted line from 728, you can do that too. Okay. Number 2. Jesse woke up this morning at 6:48 a.m. Draw hands on the clock below to show what time Jesse woke up. Okay, so I'm going to make my clock a little bit bigger. Jesse woke up at 6:48 a.m. So I need my hour hand to show 6. So my hour hand is going to point in between what two numbers? In between 6 and 7. So I'm going to draw my hand in between 6 and 7. I'm going to make my pen tool a little bit bigger too. Okay, so the hour hand, is that the shorter one or the longer one? Well, it's the shorter one because the word hour is shorter than the word minute. So 6 in between 6 and 7. And you can put an arrow on the end if you'd like. And then now I need my minute hand to show 48. So I'm going to start counting 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. If I go to 50, I'm past 48, so I'm going to go back to 45. So 45, 46, 47, 48. If you would like to, you can draw your minute hand all the way at the 48, just so you can see where your minute hand is pointing, or you can have it go right before and do your little arrow. Either way is fine. You just want to make sure that you can really tell that it's pointing, what tick mark it's pointing to, because it gets kind of hard to see sometimes. All right, and then that's all we have to do for that one. So number 3, let's take a look at it. Ms. Barnes starts teaching math at 8:23 a.m. Draw hands on the clock to show what time Mrs. Barnes starts teaching math. If you'd like to try that one, you can. Just push pause, and then you can draw the hands at 8:23, and then you can fast forward to see if your clock matches mine. So 8 means my hour hand needs to be in between 8 and 9. So maybe you've noticed a pattern that if my number's 8, it needs to be in between that number and the next number. So my hour hand is the short one, so I'm just going to draw it. And then 23. So I'm going to count 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. 25 has gone too far. So 20, 21, 22, 23. So I'm using my 5s to help me get quickly to my numbers. Okay, so and draw my line just like that for my minute hand. Okay, so those are what our 2 clocks should look like for this problem, these 2 problems. Problem 4 says the clock shows what time Rebecca finishes her homework. What time does Rebecca finish her homework? So let's look very carefully, and we're going to write down the time on the line. So for the hour hand is in between what 2 numbers? 5 and 6. So that means it's 5 o'clock. It's not quite 6 yet. So my hour should be 5. Don't forget your 2 dots for your colon. Okay, and then now I'm going to count by 5s to find my minutes. So I'm going to count by 5s first. 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And now I'm going to start counting by 1s. 26, 27. So my time is 5:27. And then we can add an AM or a PM. The problem doesn't say we have to, but it would be nice to think about it. So AM, if you remember, means the morning, and PM means like after lunchtime. So what would make more sense? If Rebecca was finished with her homework at 5:27 a.m., which would be before a lot of you get up in the morning, or 5:27 p.m., which is like dinner time. I think PM makes more sense. I hope that Rebecca's not up at 5:27 in the morning doing homework. That would be really early. All right. Oh, this is our last one. The clock below shows what time Mason's mom drops him off for practice. What time does Mason's mom drop him off? So let's read the time on the clock first to answer that question. Now, don't let the hour hand trick you on this one. Let's make it big so we can see it. The hour hand is in between what two numbers? It's in between 3 and 4. Now, if you look carefully, is our hour hand all the way to the 4 yet? Not quite. So that means our hour is still 3. Let's figure out our minutes. 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. And then I get to start counting by ones now. 56. So our hour was 3 minutes were 56. So again, what do you think, AM or PM? Well, 3:56 a.m. would be bright and early in the morning, probably before the sun comes up. And then 3:56 p.m. is like after school time. So we're going to go ahead and put a PM on this one too. Okay, our last problem, part B. So remember, if our problems have an A and a B, then that means that they're probably going to go together. So I'm going to need something from my first problem to help me do my second problem. Mason's coach arrived 11 minutes before Mason. What time did Mason's coach arrive? So he was 11 minutes before Mason. Let's use our clock to help us figure out 11 minutes before. So if I'm trying to figure out before, am I going to count forwards or backwards on my clock? I'm going to count backwards on my clock because if Mason arrived at this time and his coach arrived before he did, he's going to have to arrive earlier. So I'm going to count back 11 minutes. So this is going to be a little tricky because it's kind of hard to see while we're counting. But I'm going to start at 56 and I'm going to make jumps 11 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And I kind of lifted up my pen every time so I could see where my jumps were to make sure I was hitting those lines. Alright, so that was 11 jumps backwards. So that put me right here at the 9. So let's count and figure out how many minutes my 9 is. Because I'm not going to say 9 o'clock. I have to figure out 3 and then my minutes. 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. So that means that his coach arrived at 3:45 p.m. And I can actually use an equation to check my answer on that one. If I was arriving, or Mason arrived at 3:56 p.m. and his coach arrived 11 minutes before, I can actually subtract. I can take 56 minutes minus 11 because I'm taking 11 minutes away since he arrived 11 minutes earlier. 6 minus 1 is 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. So I can see here that 45, and I got an answer of 45. So that was just a way of checking my answer to make sure it was right. I could also have drawn a straight number line and used that to do my counting, but since we had our clock, I thought that it would be nice to use that for us. Alright, don't forget to hit save. You're going to have to do some problems like this later on when we're doing our work, so make sure that you really understand what we were doing on these problems. You can always go back and just watch this video again later too for extra practice. You can save this as M2L3.